The HOA called police to seize my cornfield on the day of my wife's funeral. I'm standing in my kitchen, still wearing my black suit from the cemetery, when I see 3 squad cars pulling into my driveway. Vivian Thornridge climbs out of the passenger seat of the lead car. Yeah, she actually rode along with the cops, clutching a stack of papers and wearing the kind of smile you see on people who kick puppies for fun. Deputy Martinez walks up to my porch, hat in hand, looking embarrassed as hell. "Mr. Caldwell, I'm real sorry about your timing here, but we got a court order saying this corn operation is illegal." The smell of coffee gone cold, the sound of handcuffs jingling on the deputy's belt, the sight of my neighbor who waited until my wife died to make her move. But Vivian just made the worst mistake of her miserable life. 7 minutes later, she discovered I own this entire valley, including the land her house sits on. Some people have no shame, but karma has perfect timing. Where are you watching from? Share how low your HOA has gone in the comments. My name is Ezra Caldwell, and 3 weeks ago I buried my wife Sarah on the same day our neighbors started planning to steal our farm. Yeah, you heard that right. While I was lowering my wife of 28 years into the ground, Vivian Thornridge was probably at home Googling how to seize agricultural property from grieving widowers. Classy lady, right? This is Whispering Pines Valley, population 847 if you count the dogs. Sarah and I own 200 acres of rolling hills, woodland, and the sweetest corn ground in 3 counties. Only 40 acres actively farmed. The rest was Sarah's walking trails, where she'd disappear for hours with her camera, photographing wildflowers and planning the retirement garden we'll never plant together. Our 1920s farmhouse sits on a hill overlooking the whole valley. The porch creaks like old bones, but it held us through 28 years of morning coffee and sunset conversations. The smell of diesel fuel from my John Deere mixing with whatever Sarah was baking, that was home. Then came Pines Ridge Estates. Picture this, 47 McMansions carved into our eastern slope like a fancy scar, each one costing more than most people make in a decade. The marketing promised authentic rural living and peaceful agricultural views. What they got was front row seats to actual farming, which apparently wasn't part of their Instagram fantasy. Enter Vivian Thornridge, HOA president and professional misery distributor. 58 years old, white Lexus SUV cleaner than a surgical instrument and fingernails so sharp they could probably cut glass. She moved here 8 months ago, right when Sarah started chemo, and became HOA dictator faster than you can say property values. Her first attack came during Sarah's second round of treatment. I'm starting my harvester at 6 a.m. because that's when farmers work, and here comes Vivian clicking across my property in heels that cost more than my seed corn. "This industrial noise is completely unacceptable," she announced, clipboard clutched like a weapon. "Surely you can postpone your agricultural activities until civilized hours." I'm standing there, wife dying of cancer, trying to keep our farm running, and this woman wants me to ask permission to work my own land. "Ma'am," I said, gripping my coffee mug to keep from saying something I'd regret, "corn doesn't care about your sleep schedule." That's when the harassment campaign began. Noise complaints every week, environmental violations that didn't exist, anonymous calls about unsafe practices and unsightly equipment. Code enforcement showed up so often I considered charging them rent. The smell of fresh harassment mixed with bureaucratic paperwork became my new normal. Meanwhile, the valley split like a rotten apple. Longtime neighbors, Marcus, who runs the auto shop, elderly Silas with his chickens, the church folks who brought casseroles during Sarah's final weeks. They had my back. They understood that farms were here first, that agricultural heritage made this place worth living in. But the new residents, they wanted the postcard without the reality. Scenic views of cornfields, but no fertilizer smells. Charming farm equipment, but no early morning diesel engines. Rural peace and quiet, but with suburban convenience and city noise laws. Every complaint felt like another shovel of dirt on Sarah's grave. Every bureaucrat with a clipboard felt like another attack on everything we'd built together. The worst part? Vivian's timing was surgical. She'd escalate every conflict right when Sarah had a bad day, when I was exhausted from hospital visits and sleepless nights. Looking back, I realized she was studying us, waiting for maximum vulnerability. 3 weeks ago, Sarah lost her battle with cancer. I held her hand as she whispered, "Don't let them take our home, Ezra. This land is our love story." 2 days after the funeral, Vivian filed her first lawsuit. Yesterday, she brought cops to seize my cornfield. Today, she's about to learn that some widowers fight back harder than she bargained for. 2 days after Sarah's funeral, while I'm still figuring out how to cook dinner for one, Vivian strikes with the precision of a legal sniper. The certified letter arrives on a Thursday morning, thick as a weapon and twice as threatening. It's a formal complaint filed with the county, claiming my commercial agricultural operation poses immediate danger to residential safety. Commercial operation? Lady, I'm growing corn, not running a meth lab. Vivian's hired Augustus Grimm. Yeah, that's his real name, and it fits like a custom-made coffin. Grimm specializes in what he calls property optimization disputes, which is lawyer speak for helping rich people steal land from folks who actually work for a living. Their weapon of choice? A dusty 1987 county ordinance about commercial agriculture in residential zones. Sounds scary until you read the fine print. Only applies to properties under 50 acres. My 200 acres should laugh this thing out of court. But grief makes you stupid, and I almost miss that crucial detail. Thank God for Dolores Martinez, Marcus's aunt, who's worked county records for 37 years. Her phone call Friday afternoon cuts through my fog like a chainsaw. Ezra, honey, something stinks worse than Silas's chicken coop about these property surveys. Get down here. The county records basement smells like mildew and broken dreams. Dolores spreads maps across a metal table, her finger tracing lines that make my blood pressure spike. Look at this mess, she mutters, comparing recent Pines Ridge surveys to original 1962 aerial photographs. These new boundaries show your corn operation magically extending into their residential buffer zones. But see this old aerial? Your family's land, their development, clear as Sarah's sweet tea. I remember my grandfather Josiah explaining boundary surveys when I was 12, teaching me that paper trails matter more than fence posts. Boy, he'd said, stabbing his finger at property deeds, when lawyers start moving lines on maps, you better damn well know where the real lines are. That wisdom just saved my farm. The aerial photos tell the truth. Several Pines Ridge properties show mysterious boundary adjustments in recent surveys, all creeping toward my farmland like legal cancer. While I'm discovering surveyor fraud, Vivian launches her community pressure campaign with the subtlety of a tornado through a trailer park. She organizes child safety patrols, groups of HOA parents photographing my dangerous equipment twice daily. Apparently, my John Deere looks like a weapon of mass destruction when shot from dramatic low angles. Who knew farming was so terrifying? Murphy's Diner becomes gossip central, thick with the smell of bacon grease and small-town drama. Half the booths support the grieving widower, half worry about property values. The coffee tastes like tension. Marcus slides into my usual booth Saturday morning, phone in hand and steam rising from his ears. Ezra, you gotta see the social media garbage. Vivian's Facebook group, Concerned Pines Ridge Parents, is a masterclass in manipulation. My irrigation system looks industrial and ominous in black and white filters. My tractor appears massive and threatening from ground-level shots, but the posts hit below the belt. Recent family tragedy may have affected farmers' judgment. Grieving widower shows increasingly erratic behavior around heavy machinery. She's using Sarah's death as ammunition. That's when Vivian makes her first critical mistake. One photograph clearly shows equipment from inside my property line, a spot she had no legal right to access. The timestamp reads 11 p.m. Wednesday, 2 days after filing her complaint. I learned evidence collection from watching too many crime shows during Sarah's chemo treatments. Trail cameras go up at every property boundary. Screenshots get saved of every social media post. License plates get documented. The community responds like antibodies fighting infection. Local farmers start driving solidarity laps past my property. Support our farmers signs sprout on lawns throughout the valley. Even some newer residents, the ones not drinking Vivian's Kool-Aid, start asking uncomfortable questions about HOA overreach. But Sunday morning brings the real shock. Fresh surveyor stakes driven deep into Sarah's favorite walking trails. These aren't weathered old markers. The metal gleams like surgical instruments, plastic ribbons bright orange as warning flags. Someone's been measuring my woodland without permission, planning something bigger than noise complaints. The sound of hammered metal stakes echoes through the trees where Sarah used to collect wildflowers for our kitchen table. Each stake feels like another nail in the coffin of our memories. That's when understanding hits like cold water. This isn't about farming violations or community standards. This is about land acquisition, and Vivian's timeline carries an urgency I don't yet understand. Monday's mail brings the escalation. Notice of emergency public safety hearing. 15 days to respond or face immediate property remediation. 15 days to prove my corn isn't a weapon of mass destruction. 15 days to honor Sarah's dying wish that I protect our home. 15 days before Vivian discovers that grief doesn't make you weak. It makes you dangerous. The county hearing feels like my own trial. except I'm not sure what crime I'm supposed to have committed besides growing corn while grieving. Vivian transforms the courthouse into her personal theater, packing it with 47 HOA members wearing matching Community Safety First t-shirts. The smell of expensive perfume mixed with righteous indignation hangs thick as smoke. I walk in wearing the same black suit from Sarah's funeral. It's the only decent one I own, and immediately spot the ambush. Vivian's got a PowerPoint presentation, professional charts, and enough legal ammunition to invade a small country. Her opening performance deserves an Oscar for best dramatic bullshit. Ladies and gentlemen, we face an unprecedented threat to our children's safety. A grief-stricken individual operating industrial machinery in an emotionally compromised state. The audacity tastes like bile in my throat. She's weaponizing my wife's death. My support team looks like the island of misfit toys. 3 weathered farmers, Marcus still wearing his work clothes, and Dolores clutching a manila folder like it contains nuclear secrets. We're bringing slingshots to a cannon fight. But sometimes David wins because he's got nothing left to lose. When hearing Officer Patricia Wells calls my name, I stand with evidence that makes Vivian's dog and pony show look amateur. Noise measurements proving compliance, soil tests showing 0 contamination, and the crown jewel, that 1962 aerial photo blown up poster size. Your Honor, I say, voice steadier than my nerves, my family was growing food here when these folks were still living in suburbs, complaining about different neighbors. A few chuckles from the farming crowd. Even Officer Wells hides a smile. Then Vivian drops her theatrical bombshell. Your Honor, I present Dr. Helena Frost, certified environmental consultant. Outstruts a woman in a pristine lab coat, carrying charts about irrigation contamination and chemical runoff dangers. She's got more credentials than a medical convention and speaks with the authority of someone who clearly knows everything about everything. This agricultural operation, Dr. Frost declares, presents immediate environmental hazards, compounded by the operator's recent psychological trauma affecting safety judgment. The room goes church quiet. Even sympathetic faces look concerned. That's when Sarah's voice echoes in my memory. Ezra, when someone's lying to your face, make them prove it where everyone can see. I pull out my phone, fingers moving with surgical precision. 3 minutes of internet searching, while Dr. Frost continues her expert testimony. Dr. Frost, I interrupt, standing slowly. Could you clarify your environmental science credentials? She launches into impressive-sounding qualifications about extensive consulting experience and advanced environmental assessment training. Fascinating, I continue, holding up my phone screen. Because according to the State Professional Registry, Helena Frost is a landscape architect from Whispering Oaks Country Club, golf course design specialist. No environmental science degree, no consulting certification, no expertise in anything except making sand traps look pretty. The explosion is immediate. Officer Wells's gavel sounds like gunshots as she restores order. Vivian's face cycles through colors not found in nature. Mrs. Thornridge, Officer Wells's voice could freeze water. This is a legal proceeding, not community theater. Your complaint is dismissed for fraudulent evidence and expert witness perjury. Victory tastes like sweet revenge mixed with stale courthouse coffee. But as we file out, I catch Vivian in heated whispers with Lawyer Grimm near the water fountain. Her words stop my blood cold. The boundary lawsuit gets filed tomorrow. He won't have time to prepare proper defense while he's still grieving. Marcus hears it too, our eyes meeting with shared alarm. 20 minutes later, I'm barely through my front door when Dolores calls, breathless with discovery. Ezra, honey, you need to sit down. I found something in those 1985 property records that explains everything. Why Vivian moved here, why she's targeting you specifically, why she waited until Sarah died. What are you talking about? There's a development agreement with clauses that make her desperation make perfect sense. But this is bigger than land grabbing, Ezra. This is about money, serious money, and time limits. The evening air carries the sound of corn leaves rustling like whispered secrets. Somewhere across the valley, Vivian's planning her next attack, but she doesn't know about Dolores' discovery. Can you meet tomorrow morning? Dolores continues. Bring Marcus. You're going to want witnesses when you see what I found. How bad is it? Bad enough that you'll understand why she attacked you on Sarah's funeral day, and good enough that we might finally have the weapon to destroy her. I sit on our porch swing, watching stars emerge over the cornfields Sarah loved. The silence feels different now, not peaceful, but loaded with possibility. Tomorrow I learn why Vivian's so desperate for my land, and why that desperation is about to become her fatal mistake. The lawsuit lands on my doorstep at 6 a.m. like a legal grenade, delivered by Deputy Rodriguez, who looks like he'd rather be arresting actual criminals. Adverse possession claim, he says, handing me papers thick enough to choke a horse. Ezra, I'm real sorry about the timing. Nobody thinks this is right. Even the sheriff's department knows Vivian's crossed every moral line in the book. The legal documents make my morning coffee taste like liquid rage. She's claiming HOA ownership of 12 acres of woodland, Sarah's favorite walking trails, based on 15 years of continuous maintenance and improvement. 15 years. The HOA has existed for 8 months. Apparently, grief doesn't just break your heart, it also makes you bad at math. But the cruel genius hits deeper. She's targeting the exact trails where Sarah spent her final good days, photographing wildflowers and planning the retirement we'll never have. Even dead, my wife's not safe from this woman's greed. Clayton Hayes spreads the property surveys across his desk like a crime scene investigation. His weathered surveyor hands trace boundary lines with 30 years of experience, and what he finds makes my blood pressure spike. "This is artistic fraud," he mutters, pointing to official-looking documents. "These property stakes have been moved an average of 47 feet toward your land. That's not natural drift. That's calculated theft." We walk my property line in morning air sharp enough to cut glass. The measuring tape zings between old iron pins my grandfather set in 1924 and shiny new stakes that gleam like surgical instruments. "GPS technology doesn't lie," Clayton explains, taking readings precise to 2 inches. These moved boundaries represent roughly $2.3 million in stolen property value. My grandfather's voice echoes from childhood lessons about land ownership. "Boy, property thieves have existed since Cain killed Abel, but they can't steal what you can prove belongs to you. That wisdom just saved my farm." Then Clayton drops the bombshell that changes everything. "Ezra, look at this signature page from the original 1985 development agreement. There, in flowing purple ink, the name Vivian Thornridge appears as project coordinator for Thornridge Construction Company." "She didn't just move here randomly," Clayton says grimly. "She personally oversaw this development 8 months ago. Every property line, every boundary marker, every legal description. She knew it all from day one." The revelation hits like cold water. This isn't opportunistic land grabbing. This is premeditated theft with surgical timing. While I'm processing surveyor fraud, Vivian launches her cruelest psychological attack yet. Memorial Cleanup Day appears on HOA social media, scheduled for Thursday afternoon during my grief counseling session. They're targeting Sarah's trails with garden benches, flower beds, and community improvements designed to support their adverse possession claim. The timing is surgical cruelty. She knows I can't be there to stop them. When I return from therapy, Sarah's peaceful woodland looks like suburban Disneyland. Garden benches sit where my wife used to rest during walks. Manicured flower beds bloom where she photographed native wildflowers. They've turned her memory into legal evidence. The smell of fresh mulch mixed with betrayal creates a toxic cocktail in my chest. I find 20 HOA members in matching t-shirts taking photographs for court documentation. They're posing beside their improvements like tourists at a monument to my wife's stolen piece. "Get off my property," I say, voice shaking with rage that surprises even me. "These are Sarah's trails. She died 3 weeks ago, and you're pissing on her grave." Vivian stands among the flower beds like Napoleon surveying conquered territory. "Mr. Caldwell, this neglected land desperately needed community stewardship. Your obvious grief has prevented proper environmental care." Neglected? The word explodes from my throat. My wife walked these trails every day until chemo made her too weak to stand. You vultures waited until her body was cold to move in. Cell phone cameras capture every heated word for future court battles. HOA members claim they're preserving natural beauty while standing on my private property like colonizers planting flags. But that night, my trail cameras reveal the smoking gun. Midnight footage shows Vivian and 2 men in Thornridge construction coveralls systematically moving survey stakes deeper into my woodland. License plates clearly visible, GPS coordinates automatically recorded, systematic property theft documented in high-definition digital evidence. The next morning, attorney Rebecca Swift calls with news that makes everything click into place. "Ezra, I've researched Vivian's background across 3 counties. She's used identical boundary dispute tactics on elderly farmers and recent widowers. But here's the crucial detail. Every case has the same timeline pattern." "What kind of pattern?" She needs to complete these land acquisitions before January 1st. There's a legal deadline attached to the original development agreement that expires December 31st. If she doesn't secure adjacent properties by then, her entire development empire collapses. How do you know? Because I found the smoking gun in county records. And tomorrow morning, you're going to see why she attacked you on Sarah's funeral day, and why that desperation is about to destroy her completely. The discovery that changes everything happens in Rebecca's law office, surrounded by the smell of burnt coffee and legal vengeance. She's got documents spread across her conference table like a battle plan, with Dolores and Marcus as my emotional backup squad. The morning light streaming through dusty windows makes the papers look like evidence of war crimes. Ezra, Rebecca says, sliding a thick folder toward me, what I'm about to show you will make you understand why that bitch attacked you on Sarah's funeral day. The first document stops my heart. 1985 Whispering Pines Valley Development Agreement, stamped and official. Buried in 47 pages of legal nonsense is a clause that explains Vivian's desperation. Land banking provision, Rebecca explains, her finger stabbing at highlighted text. Thornridge Construction gets first right of refusal on any property sales within 5 miles of their development. But look at this expiration date, January 1st, 2024, 6 weeks from today. Holy shit, Marcus whispers. She's running out of time. Gets worse, Dolores adds, pulling out property records that make my stomach churn. 4 other Valley properties since 2021. Same pattern every time. Boundary disputes, expensive lawsuits, forced sales. Rebecca spreads out the evidence like playing cards. Elderly Farmer Johnson, $400,000 property sold for $90,000. Widow Peterson, $350,000 land went for $75,000. All because manufactured legal problems made their properties unmarketable. The systematic theft hits me like physical pain. How much money are we talking about? Thornridge has stolen roughly $3.2 million in land value over 3 years. And your 200 acres? That's the crown jewel worth $8, $12 million for subdivision development. Then Rebecca drops the personal bombshell that makes everything crystal clear. Vivian's grandfather Harold lost his farm in 1963. Guess who bought it at foreclosure? My mouth goes dry. My grandfather. Josiah Caldwell, $8,000 at county auction. Legal and fair, but Harold spent the rest of his life claiming he was cheated. Vivian grew up hearing bedtime stories about evil Caldwells stealing Thornridge family land. So Sarah and I weren't just victims. We were targets of 60-year-old revenge fantasies. But here's where she'd fucked up, Rebecca grins with prosecutorial bloodlust. The right of refusal only applies to voluntary sales. Properties taken through lawsuits don't qualify. Meaning? Every legal attack she launches actually destroys her own development rights. She's committing economic suicide while trying to steal your land. Marcus starts laughing so hard he nearly chokes on his coffee. She's been playing herself this whole time? Wait, there's more, Rebecca continues, producing a document that looks older than Moses. Original 1918 land deed from the courthouse basement. Your great-great-grandfather owned this entire valley before any development agreements existed. The implications explode in my brain like fireworks. The 1985 agreement is invalid? Completely. The county granted development rights to land they didn't control, which means I can challenge the entire development, I finish, understanding flooding through me like warm whiskey. Not just defend, Ezra. Attack. We can potentially void every property transfer since 1985 and recover millions for theft victims. The room falls silent, except for the sound of my heart hammering against my ribs. For the first time since Sarah died, I feel something stronger than grief coursing through my veins. What's our play? County commissioners meeting Tuesday night. All 3 commissioners who approved Thornridge deals are up for re-election. Perfect timing for maximum public humiliation. And Vivian? She thinks she's winning. Let her keep believing that until we destroy her in front of the entire community. I stand up, Sarah's wedding ring catching the light on my finger. She wanted a war over my wife's grave. She's about to get one. Sarah's dining room transforms into mission control for Operation Destroy Vivian, the same table where my wife used to grade papers, now covered with enough evidence to put half the county in prison. The air smells like determination mixed with Marcus's motor oil and Rebecca's stress-fueled chain smoking. Coffee cups multiply like rabbits among property deeds that will change everything. All right, gentlemen, Rebecca announces, spreading maps like a general planning the invasion of Normandy. We're about to turn Vivian's own tactics against her, but first, we need bulletproof evidence. Clayton arrives hauling surveying equipment that looks like it could guide space shuttles. His GPS readings make my grandfather's old Transit look like a toy, and what we discover would make a saint curse. These boundary manipulations are surgical, he explains, taking measurements precise to within 2 inches. Average stake movement, 47 feet toward your property, that's $2. $3 million in attempted theft, documented with coordinates that even Supreme Court justices couldn't argue with. I remember my grandfather teaching me about surveys when I was 12, showing me how to read property descriptions and find corner markers. Boy, he'd said, modern liars use fancy equipment, but the truth is still the truth. Technology just makes it harder to hide. That lesson is about to save my farm and destroy Vivian's empire. Marcus becomes our intelligence commander, scrolling through Vivian's social media with the focus of a detective solving murder. Look at this coordination. She's documented her entire criminal conspiracy on Facebook. Even posted photos of your property with captions like, "Soon, this eyesore will become beautiful community space." She's been planning this since Sarah got sick, I realize, watching months of calculated posts. Every sympathy card, every casserole delivery, she was studying us, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Rebecca's financial investigation reveals why Vivian's timing was so surgical. Thornridge Construction is drowning in debt, $25 million in loans due February 2024, with future development rights as only collateral. If they don't acquire adjacent properties before January 1st, bankruptcy destroys everything. So she's not just greedy, Marcus says. She's desperate. Desperate enough to attack a man at his wife's funeral, I add grimly. But desperation makes people sloppy. Dolores becomes our deep throat, using 3 decades of county connections to expose corruption faster than investigative journalists. Commissioner Bradley took $15,000 from Thornridge. Murphy got $12,000. Williams accepted $8,000 in consulting fees for fast-tracking development permits. The web of corruption spreads like cancer, but it also gives us more targets for public execution. Community organizing happens with grassroots efficiency that would make political campaigns jealous. Valley Heritage Defense Committee grows to 60 members, more than the entire HOA. Longtime residents who remember when this valley fed families instead of feeding corporate greed. Marcus, I ask, how many signatures can we get on a petition supporting agricultural heritage? How many you want? Half these folks remember your grandfather helping their families during the farm crisis. The other half are just pissed about property taxes rising because of McMansion developments. Rebecca contacts investigative reporter Stella Remy with evidence packets that read like crime novels. Media timing is crucial. We coordinate legal filings with newspaper releases for maximum public impact. Vivian's going to face justice in courtrooms and headlines simultaneously. Personal preparation cuts deepest. I practice testimony while wearing Sarah's favorite tie, blue with tiny cornflowers she bought for our 10th anniversary. The fabric still carries a hint of her perfume, and speaking about our land while wearing it feels like she's standing beside me. Channel your grief into determination, Rebecca coaches. You're not just defending property. You're protecting every rural family from predators like Vivian. You're proving that ordinary people can defeat systematic corruption. The evening before our courthouse ambush, I sit on the porch swing where Sarah and I planned our retirement. Stars emerge over cornfields that represent 4 generations of family sweat. And for the first time since her funeral, I feel something stronger than grief. I feel the righteous anger of a man protecting his wife's memory. Sarah, I whisper to the night air, tomorrow we honor your love for this land. And we make sure no other widow gets attacked at their spouse's funeral. The corn leaves rustle like applause in the evening breeze, and I swear I can hear her voice. Give them hell, honey. Give them hell. Tuesday night, Vivian Thornridge discovers that attacking grieving widowers was the biggest mistake of her miserable life. And every farmer in 3 counties is going to watch her empire crumble on live television. Justice tastes like sweet revenge mixed with morning coffee, and it's been brewing since the day she brought cops to my wife's funeral. Monday morning brings Vivian's desperation to DEFCON 1 levels. She files a police report claiming I threatened her with a combine harvester while having what she calls a grief-induced psychotic break. The fictional police report reads like a rejected script from a bad horror movie. According to her statement, I aggressively pursued her vehicle with industrial farming equipment, while shouting threats about burying her problems in the cornfield. Deputy Martinez shows up looking like he'd rather be investigating actual crimes instead of suburban fantasy novels. The morning air carries the smell of fresh bullshit mixed with his obvious embarrassment as we review security footage on my laptop. Ezra, this is getting stupid, he sighs, watching video of me peacefully harvesting corn while Vivian claims I was hunting her with heavy machinery. According to her timeline, you threatened her at 3 p.m. yesterday. This footage shows you were buying feed at the co-op in town. Radio chatter from his patrol car provides soundtrack to our evidence review, timestamps destroying every word of her manufactured drama. Even small-town cops have limits for rich people's lies. But Vivian's psychological warfare is just getting started. Channel 8 News receives an anonymous tip about an unstable farmer whose recent family tragedy has created public safety hazards. She coordinates an HOA safety march timed perfectly for evening broadcast ratings. 47 McMansion residents parade past my property wearing matching Protect Our Children t-shirts, carrying signs that make my grief sound like terrorism. Agricultural accountability now, and community safety over individual rights. The social media assault launches with military precision. Facebook posts multiply like cancer. Dangerous widower operating heavy machinery near children. How many kids must be endangered before someone stops this madness? Recent loss clearly affecting his judgment about community safety. She's turned Sarah's death into ammunition for character assassination. Marcus becomes my intelligence officer, monitoring their digital coordination with the dedication of a cyber warfare specialist. They're planning something called Documentation Day for Thursday, he reports, showing me infiltrated HOA messages. Mass photography of all your equipment for safety violation evidence. Thursday morning, I wake up to economic terrorism. The sound of gushing water where no water should be gushing draws me outside to find $4,000 worth of irrigation infrastructure systematically destroyed. Clean cuts through main supply lines, deliberately shattered valve assemblies, electronic controls smashed with surgical precision. The smell of wet earth mixed with financial ruin fills the dawn air as I survey professional-grade sabotage designed to kill my harvest during critical growing season. Tire tracks in the mud match the luxury SUV patterns I've been documenting for weeks. This isn't vandalism, this is agricultural murder. Those bastards knew exactly which pipes to cut, Marcus growls, examining the destruction with mechanics expertise. This wasn't random damage. Someone studied your irrigation system before destroying it. We photograph evidence while I calculate crop losses that could bankrupt a family farm. The timing is surgical cruelty. Too late to replant, too expensive to repair quickly, perfectly designed to force a distress sale. That afternoon, Vivian delivers her coup de grace. She appears on my front porch like death in designer clothing, carrying an offer that would make mob bosses jealous. $500,000 for 12 acres she doesn't own, contingent on my agreement to cease agricultural operations within 200 yards of residential development. Mr. Caldwell, she purrs, standing on my property like she already owns it. Recent incidents clearly demonstrate that continued farming exceeds your current emotional capabilities. The sheer audacity could choke a horse. She's offering to buy land she's been stealing while standing on property she's been destroying. That's mighty generous, I reply, gripping my coffee mug hard enough to crack porcelain. But I'm not selling Sarah's walking trails to the woman who brought cops to her funeral. Her perfect smile fractures like ice on a pond, the first crack in her sociopathic facade. Mr. Caldwell, grief sometimes prevents rational decision-making. I'd hate for additional complications to worsen your already difficult situation. The threat hangs between us like cordite smoke. She's not offering money. She's demanding protection payments. Mrs. Thornridge, I say, stepping close enough that she can smell honest work on my clothes, you've made one fatal miscalculation in your little war against my family. Which is, you thought grief would break me. Instead, it just made me absolutely fucking fearless. Her composure shatters completely as she realizes she's not fighting a broken widower. She's fighting a man with nothing left to lose. That evening, Rebecca calls with intelligence that changes everything. Emergency HOA meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning. Topic: final community action regarding agricultural threat. But here's the beautiful part. I know exactly what she's planning. What? She's going to call in a fake environmental emergency to force immediate property seizure. But what she doesn't know is that we've been monitoring her communications. How? Because federal investigators have been watching her for 3 weeks, and tomorrow morning, she's going to commit felony fraud in front of witnesses who are actually undercover agents. Tuesday morning at 7:23 a.m., Vivian commits the kind of fraud that makes federal agents weep with joy. Her 911 call reports an environmental catastrophe in progress at my farm, claiming I'm spraying toxic chemicals in a grief-induced rage that threatens to poison the entire county's water supply. The emergency response looks like a scene from a disaster movie. Fire trucks, hazmat team, ambulances, and patrol cars converge on my property with sirens wailing loud enough to wake the dead, including Sarah, who would have laughed her ass off at this theatrical bullshit. The smell of diesel exhaust mixes with pure desperation as 47 first responders search for environmental disasters that exist only in Vivian's delusional imagination. Deputy Martinez emerges from his cruiser looking like a man who's reached his breaking point. Ezra, this is the 5th emergency call this week. Either you're running a secret chemical weapons program or somebody's using 911 like their personal complaint hotline. The hazmat team spreads across my cornfield with equipment sensitive enough to detect a butterfly's fart, finding absolutely nothing except legally applied fertilizer from 3 weeks ago. They look increasingly annoyed at being dragged out for suburban paranoia. Environmental Inspector Janet Morrison tests soil, water, and air quality with scientific precision that would impress NASA. Her conclusion carries the authority of 20 years' experience. This farm is cleaner than most city parks. Whoever reported this emergency either failed basic chemistry or is deliberately wasting taxpayer resources. But Vivian's grand finale makes her previous lies look like parking tickets. She produces an emergency court order authorizing immediate property seizure under environmental crisis protocols. The document looks official enough to fool amateurs, complete with county seal and judicial signature. That's when Rebecca's legal education pays off like winning the lottery. Mrs. Thornridge, I announce loud enough for gathering spectators, this order is signed by Judge Harrison Miller. Fascinating choice considering Judge Miller died of a heart attack 6 months ago. Are you claiming judicial authority from the afterlife? The silence that follows could stop traffic in 3 counties. Deputy Martinez examines the forged document with the expression of a man watching someone commit career suicide. Ma'am, presenting falsified court orders to law enforcement is a federal felony. Did your attorney really prepare paperwork signed by dead judges? Vivian's face transitions through colors not found in earthly rainbows. There must be some administrative error, she stammers, realizing her desperate gambit just became criminal evidence. Legal documents sometimes have clerical inconsistencies. Clerical inconsistencies? Martinez pulls out handcuffs with the satisfaction of a man finally arresting the right person. Lady, you just tried to steal property using court orders from the spirit world? The gathering crowd includes faces I don't recognize. 3 people in casual clothes taking professional photographs and notes. Their relaxed demeanor doesn't quite hide the federal agent energy radiating like heat from asphalt. Channel 8 News arrives because Vivian called them to film her triumphant property seizure. Reporter Stella Remy expects environmental crisis footage, but finds herself documenting felony fraud in real time. Mrs. Thornridge, Stella shoves a microphone toward Vivian's increasingly panicked face. Can you explain why you presented court documents signed by deceased officials? This is a conspiracy, Vivian shrieks, her sanity finally snapping like overloaded cable. This corrupt farmer has obviously bribed the entire county government. The accusation echoes across my property like a confession of complete mental breakdown. Even her HOA supporters start backing away from the woman accusing local cops of corruption. That's when the beautiful trap springs with mechanical precision. The 3 mysterious observers step forward with badges that shine like justice in morning sunlight. Mrs. Thornridge, I'm Agent Rebecca Thompson with the FBI Rural Crime Task Force. You're under arrest for wire fraud, conspiracy, filing false emergency reports, and systematic elder abuse. The sound of handcuffs clicking onto Vivian's wrists creates the most beautiful music I've heard since Sarah's laughter echoed through our kitchen. This investigation has been active for 3 weeks, Agent Thompson continues. Based on evidence of coordinated rural land theft across 4 counties, your entire operation has been under federal surveillance. Vivian's eyes widen with the realization that while she thought she was hunting me, federal agents were hunting her. Mr. Caldwell, Agent Thompson says, we'll need your testimony about harassment patterns, but I want you to know, your case broke this entire conspiracy open. Your wife's memory is being honored by the justice served today. As they load Vivian into the federal vehicle, she makes one final desperate plea. This is persecution of legitimate business practices. I was protecting the community from agricultural hazards. Ma'am, Agent Thompson replies with the patience reserved for complete idiots. You filed false emergency reports about pesticide use on a farm that hasn't applied chemicals in 2 months. You presented court orders signed by dead judges. You've systematically stolen property from elderly farmers and recent widowers. The federal car disappears down my driveway, carrying Vivian toward a future that includes orange clothing and small rooms with bars. Tonight's county meeting becomes celebration instead of desperate defense. And Sarah's memory gets the justice it always deserved. The courthouse erupts like a powder keg with 300 angry citizens crammed into a room built for half that number. The air tastes like righteous fury mixed with stale coffee and the kind of tension that starts revolutions. Commissioner Patricia Wells pounds her gavel like she's driving fence posts, trying to restore order to chaos that's been building for months. Camera crews from 4 news stations jostle for position, while overflow crowds press against windows like they're watching the Super Bowl. This emergency session addresses federal arrests related to systematic land fraud in our county, Wells announces, her voice barely audible over the crowd's rumble. Rebecca stands to present evidence with prosecutorial precision that would make Supreme Court justices weep. Charts, timelines, and GPS data project onto screens while 300 witnesses watch their community's biggest scandal unfold in real time. Ladies and gentlemen, Rebecca begins, Vivian Thornridge didn't just steal land. She orchestrated the largest rural property fraud in Iowa history. The evidence hits like physical blows. Historical maps showing systematic boundary theft, financial records proving $3.2 million in stolen property, photographs of moved survey stakes creating fraudulent property lines. Clayton Hayes delivers technical testimony that makes farmers curse and accountants cry. Average property stake movement, 47 feet toward targeted properties. This represents professional-grade theft requiring surveying equipment and detailed knowledge of legal descriptions. Angry murmurs ripple through longtime residents realizing their vulnerable neighbors were systematically robbed by suburban predators. Then Commissioner Wells calls my name, and the room falls silent as a funeral. I stand wearing Sarah's cornflower tie, feeling 300 pairs of eyes and the weight of 4 generations watching from wherever farmers go when they die. 3 weeks ago, I begin, my voice cracking slightly. I buried my wife Sarah in Whispering Pines Cemetery. 28 years of marriage, ended by cancer that stole her piece by piece until all I had left were memories and the land she loved. The silence becomes absolute. You could hear a pin drop in Kansas. That same day, while I was still wearing my funeral suit and trying to figure out how to live without her, Vivian Thornridge brought police to steal my cornfield. Gasps echo like gunshots. Even people who knew the story look physically sick hearing it stated so bluntly. She waited until my wife's body was cold in the ground to begin her attack. She used Sarah's death as evidence that I was mentally unfit to farm. She turned my grief into her weapon. The crowd's anger becomes palpable, a living thing that fills the room like smoke. But here's what that heartless bitch didn't understand about widowed farmers, I continue, abandoning any pretense of politeness. Grief doesn't make us weak. It makes us absolutely fucking dangerous. The courthouse explodes. Commissioner Wells doesn't even try to restore order as 300 people cheer like their team just won the World Series. For 60 years, Vivian blamed my family for her grandfather's financial problems. But the truth is right here in public records. Harold Thornridge sold his farm voluntarily in 1963 for fair market value. No foreclosure, no theft, no injustice, except in her twisted imagination. I hold up the 1918 deed that started everything. My great-great-grandfather bought this valley when Iowa was still frontier. We've been growing food here since before this courthouse existed. The mic drop moment arrives with perfect timing. Vivian Thornridge thought she could steal my wife's memory along with my land. Instead, she exposed a criminal conspiracy that robbed millions from rural families across 4 counties. And now she's going to federal prison for a very long time. The building shakes with applause that doesn't stop for 2 full minutes. But the real fireworks start when Commissioner Bradley tries to defend himself. These allegations are politically motivated attacks on legitimate business development, he stammers, sweat visible under television lights. Agent Thompson stands with federal authority that silences his excuses. Commissioner Bradley, your bank records show $15,000 in payments from Thornridge Construction for consulting services you never provided. That's bribery, and you're under arrest. The handcuffs clicking onto Bradley's wrists create better entertainment than anything on cable television. Commissioners Murphy and Williams resign faster than rats abandoning a sinking ship, their political careers ending with the sound of gavels and public humiliation. Emergency elections within 60 days, Wells declares. This county deserves honest representation. As the meeting ends, the crowd doesn't leave. They transform into a spontaneous block party. Farmers who feuded for years shake hands over ancient grudges. Former HOA residents apologize to longtime neighbors for supporting Vivian's lies. The smell of justice mixes with autumn air carrying the scent of corn ready for harvest, Sarah's favorite season, when the valley turns golden with the promise of another year's growth. Walking home under stars that witnessed my family's century of honest work, I feel Sarah's presence stronger than any night since her funeral. Her memory got the vindication it deserved, and tomorrow we start healing the community she loved. 2 weeks later, justice tastes sweeter than Sarah's apple pie and twice as satisfying. Vivian faces 23 federal charges, including wire fraud, conspiracy, elder abuse, and filing false emergency reports. The federal prosecutor calls it the most systematic rural land theft scheme in Midwest history, which sounds fancy but basically means she's screwed 6 ways from Sunday. Denied bail as a flight risk, she's spending her days in orange jumpsuits that clash horribly with her expensive manicures. Augustus Grimm, her scumbag lawyer, got disbarred faster than you can say fraudulent court documents and faces separate criminal charges for conspiracy. Thornridge Construction filed bankruptcy within 48 hours of Vivian's arrest, their $25 million debt load collapsing like a house of cards in a tornado. The HOA officially dissolved when residents discovered their fees were funding illegal land acquisition schemes instead of community improvements. But the real satisfaction comes from watching justice ripple outward like stones thrown in still water. Federal investigators recovered $4.2 million in stolen property across 4 counties, returning land to 12 elderly farmers and 3 widows who thought they'd lost everything to legal manipulation. Mrs. Peterson got her family farm back. The Johnson brothers recovered 60 acres stolen through boundary fraud. Each victory feels like vindication for Sarah's memory. Former HOA residents integrate into valley life with surprising grace. Most were decent people, fooled by a master manipulator who weaponized their suburban fears against rural neighbors. Community potluck dinners replace homeowner association meetings, and property values stabilize without development pressure threatening agricultural heritage. Marcus organizes the Valley Heritage Festival 6 months later, combining farming education with community healing. Former enemies work side by side grilling corn and telling stories about the crazy woman who tried to steal half the county before federal agents hauled her away in handcuffs. The Ezra Caldwell Memorial Foundation launches with $200,000 in donations from grateful families whose properties were restored. We establish conservation easements protecting 500 acres of agricultural land from future development, ensuring this valley feeds families instead of feeding corporate greed for generations to come. The Foundation's scholarship program sends rural kids to agricultural college, honoring Sarah's teaching legacy while investing in farming's future. First recipient is Marcus's niece Elena, studying sustainable agriculture at Iowa State with dreams of revolutionizing organic farming techniques. Rebecca's Rural Property Rights Defense Network provides free legal assistance for boundary disputes and development fraud across the Midwest. Clayton offers discounted surveying for elderly landowners, and together they've prevented 6 similar schemes from destroying other farming communities. Stella Remy's investigative series wins a Pulitzer Prize for exposing systematic rural land theft, bringing national attention to predatory development practices targeting vulnerable agricultural families. Her documentary, Justice in the Cornfield, airs on PBS, reaching millions of viewers who never knew such corruption existed. Personal healing comes slower but deeper than legal victory. My daughters return from college with plans to modernize our farming operation using sustainable techniques Sarah would have loved. The vegetable garden she dreamed of blooms beside our farmhouse, tended by granddaughters who never met her but carry her love for growing things. I still drink coffee on our porch every sunrise, watching corn grow in fields that represent 4 generations of honest work. The silence feels different now, not empty with loss, but full of purpose and peace. Sarah's walking trails become county nature preserve, where families photograph wildflowers and children learn about agricultural heritage. The biggest surprise? 3 former HOA families bought small acreage and started hobby farms, growing vegetables and raising chickens under guidance from longtime neighbors they once considered enemies. Community gardens replace subdivision lawns, and the smell of fresh bread from backyard ovens mixes with morning coffee and diesel fuel from tractors. 1 year later, standing in the corn maze shaped like a heart at our memorial festival, I feel Sarah's presence in every laughing child and every friendship rebuilt from the ashes of Vivian's hatred. Evil lost, good won, community healed, and sometimes that's exactly how the story should end. Share your HOA nightmare stories below. This community protects each other from predators like Vivian. Subscribe for more victories where ordinary people defeat corrupt systems through determination, evidence, and the kind of justice that makes Sarah smile from wherever farmers' wives go when their work here is finished. Next week, how a retired librarian used a forgotten railroad easement to destroy a casino development and save her town's water supply.